Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I'm Coach Sherry. I'm in my car, so this is Car Chat and all that. So I was listening to a documentary on Zora Neale Hurston, and she is a phenomenal writer in the Black community, and she wrote about folklore, and she did interviews. I didn't realize she was going to school to be an anthropologist. She acquired her associate's degree from Howard University. She was born at the end of the 19th century. She was good friends with Langston Hughes and, had an opportunity to go to get her doctorate at Columbia in New York, but recognized that, her skills, her experiences were beyond the classroom. And, I grew up reading. My mother always ensured that I was reading. And I remember happening upon one of Zora Neale Hurston's books. And it may be one of the original paperback copies because it was a really old version. I need to find it and look at when it was published, the copy that I found that my mother had. My mother was an avid reader as well. And Zora Neale Hurston, her literary work is so dynamic and important to our history. She did interviews. She wrote in the actual dialect that the person that she was interviewed was speaking. She never compromised her work and, to accommodate others for better understanding. No, she put it in its raw, authentic form. And one book in particular that I was just mentioning is Your Eyes Are Watching God. And that book was actually published in 1937. And again, I was listening to a documentary about her, and they were saying how much of a flop that book was. Richard Wright gave it bad reviews. So many respected published authors at that time, in that time, did not prefer it, and they felt like it didn't have any real meat to it. It just was not good. And y'all, that was one of the most beautiful stories I've ever read. So it's just incredible how, people view things, and something can seem like it's dead in the water. Things that you're doing right now, maybe some people are not catching on to it. Maybe they are looking at it like, this has no value. Who wants this? No one's going to read this. No one's going to buy this. No one's going to listen to this. But listen, when you do something and it has integrity, when you do something and you do it with great intentions, eventually it will catch hold. And yes, it was several decades later. It was 2005 when the movie Their Eyes Were Watching God, starring Halle Berry, was made. And Ruby Dee was in that movie. Several actors were in that movie that many of you will be familiar with. And when I saw the movie coming out, I was so excited because, again, I had read that book many, many years before. And I just couldn't believe they were putting it into a movie form. And y'all, it was still, be it via reading it or seeing it in a movie, it is one of the most beautiful pieces. And it was several years, 60 plus years later, that it started to get the recognition it deserved. Again, she wrote that book in 1937. The movie did not come out until 2005, and bringing more light to it. And, her stories about Eatonville, Florida, that's where she started her life in, and her going back and gathering those stories of people, families, traditions, has really set us up historically to understand where we came from. We may not be from Eatonville, Florida, but we are from some place, some ville in some state that mimics it for sure. And I just got so inspired and motivated by hearing the documentary. It's here on YouTube, and if I remember to put it in the link in the description box from this video. But, you have to have stick-to-itness. There were lean times, very lean times, when she had to ask people to help her purchase one pair of new shoes. There were times where she didn't have a place to live or couldn't even get into a place to live and had to sleep in her car, but she kept to what her desires were, what her purpose in life was, her passion, which was to do that research and write about it, to tell the story in its most authentic way. So we all have that story in us. It may not be a book per se, but it's a story, it's a thing, it's something in us that is there for us to develop, to nurture, to take care of, to explore, to expose, to make people aware of it. Don't give up on that. Just because it may not hit today, it may not hit tomorrow, but it will hit as long as you believe it and you do your very best while you're doing it. She always made sure she did her best. She did her best work. Everyone knew that. They knew that, she wrote with such rigor that it could not even be compared. They even considered her the number one in the world, in terms of translating and transferring those stories and capturing those stories and being able to put it in a way that she even had things going on stage, as a play. So really, she also was a playwright. She sang, she put the folklores into songs, and just so much that she did with her craft. So don't give up. Always do your best. I was talking the other day about being great. Don't just do what you do good, do it great. And so if nothing else, be inspired by Zora Neale Hurston, because she is one of America's finest. Thank you so much for tuning in. It's been my pleasure sharing this with you. I hope you do your research and check out Zora Neale Hurston. I am Coach Sherry.